Okay, so today we're going to do some bookbinding. To start, I thought we could just make the simplest book with the packets of supplies that we're going to pass out. There's going to be materials enough to do more than one project. And the first couple will be pretty simple. Some of them might get a little bit more complicated, but it's sort of take it step by step. So here, I'll give you a piece of paper to Eleanor. And with this first one, we actually don't use any sewing. We want to fold our piece of paper in half, short end to short end, what I think in school they call hamburger. You guys familiar with that?
Hamburger style.
Hamburger style, yeah. We do a hamburger style. We open it up. We have two sections, right? Then we want to fold it in half, long end to long end, or hot dog style. Open it again. And we should have the 4 different sections. And then you want to take one of the short ends and fold it to the middle. So you end up with 4 small rectangles on that side, and we just got the 2 bigger ones here. Then we flip it over and fold the other side. Yeah, and so when we're done with that, we should have 8 small rectangles on here. And the type of book we're making is actually called an octavo signature fold. The sections inside of a book are called octavo, are called signatures. And this one's octavo because oct is 8, right? Like an octopus has 8 legs. In any case, so what we're going to do next, now that we've got it open, we're going to, using the folding it the way it wants to, we're going to do that first hamburger fold again, right? So it should just be in half, but hamburger, right? Not the hot dog long skinny way. And you'll see that all the sides, except for one, right, where the fold is, are open. And so we're going to take our scissors, and from the folded side, we're going to cut along our little crease here. And we want to go from one side just a little bit past the middle, right? So to do it right, when you open it up, you have a hole in the middle. It's like a mask, bird mask, beak or something. Yeah, it's good. Ninja mask. So then holding it all the way open, we want to, again, following our folds, fold it hot dog. And then holding on to the 2 ends of the hot dog, you kind of push it together. And once the different sides meet the middle, it should be able to sort of flatten down. And now it's 2 sections. And you just kind of feel which way it really wants to fold. And you fold the last little bit. And so that is a small book. And it's an 8-page book where every single one of the 8 pages is on the one side of the sheet of paper. So what's cool with this one is you can draw a story that's 8 pages long, and you could even photocopy it and then cut and fold them and make lots of your own little story, your own little book. Yeah, it's the 1-page book. So that's our first book, pretty simple. The next one we're going to make is sort of similar. We're going to make it a little bit bigger. And so we're going to each need some paper. And to start, we're going to take our sheets of paper and again, first fold it hamburger. So just one at a time. Hamburger. And then we fold it over without undoing our first fold. We fold it over again. I think that'd be like a double hamburger. Yeah, we'll call that the double hamburger. Big Mac, right? Do they have 2 patties? That's the Big Mac fold. And so what you end up with is something that's about twice as big, right? But it has, if you were to cut these pages loose at the top, you'd end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on this side, 7 and 8. So for this book, depending on how many pages you want in the book, you want to fold more of these for every 8 pages. So if we say wanted a 40-page book, we'd need to fold 5 of them, right? And so if you wanted an 80-page book, you'd fold 10. So let's just fold a few. Let's each do maybe 5 or 6. So with these, the next step is we're going to put them each inside of the other. So it's like nesting them together.
Does it matter which way they go in?
No, I mean, I think usually all the same way, where the fold is all to the top tends to be, but you can do it either way. So that's how thick our book will end up being. The reason we folded them one by one is because if we tried to take a big thing of them and fold them all at once, it would crease a lot, and you wouldn't have as nice straight edges. There's a limitation to how thick of a piece of paper or how much paper you can fold.
I think it's 8 times.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's somewhere around there. So it's good to fold the pages individually so you don't have to force them. The next step is going to be putting holes through the back of or what we call like the spine of the book. So if you were to kind of put it up like a house, the crease at the top is where the holes will be. The holes aren't going straight through the front, right? They're not going through the face of it. And we've got here this tool called an awl, which is a big needle for poking holes in paper or board or fabric or leather. But the stuff we send home is not going to include an awl. So you'll have to use your needle. And so with an awl, you can just go right through the whole stack of paper. With the needle, you're going to have to do them one at a time. And so I'm going to grab a pencil real quick and I'll show you the way that I do it when I don't have an awl. What I would do is before I stack them together, I'll take them all apart. And hold them together tight. And with my pencil, I put a line across the spine here where I want to punch my holes. And so for this, we're going to need 3. 1 hole at the top, 1 hole at the bottom, and 1 in the middle. And so if I were doing it with the needle, again, I draw a line across the top, across the middle, and the bottom. But with the awl, you can just put them all together and poke it through the middle. So see, like that. And then I could take this needle and 1, 2, 3, set that one to the side. See, so then my pencil mark is still there. It's just a small little pencil mark. 1, the one in the middle I already did, 2, 3, so on and so forth. But to save time, I'm going to put them back together and show you with the awl. So we want 3 holes, 1 in the top, 1 in the bottom, 1 in the middle. I usually punch the holes from the inside. This time because I already started on the outside there. When you put them back together, you want to make sure that you put the top to the top and the bottom to the bottom so that your holes line up. And if you're using your needle to make the holes, sometimes the way they line up is a little bit loose, so it's going to take a little bit of fiddling to get the needle through the first time, but it shouldn't be too bad. So then we're going to take some of this thread. This is linen thread, but you can use dental floss. You can use that artificial sinew stuff that you get at like a beading store or like a leather store. But this is linen thread, and this stuff actually has a little bit of wax on it. And you want to cut a piece that is the height of your book. So see, this is about the height of the book. And in this case, we want about 3 times the height. So I could just wrap around 1, 2, and then 3. Should be enough. It's better to have a little bit of extra thread than it is to have too little, because you can always cut off the extra. So you can go from that same thread. And then we just have to thread the needle, which is, you know, a hard part, right? Oh man, my mouth is hidden. Usually. So we're gonna start, let's start from the outside of the book. So again, if it was kind of like a house, we'd be going from the outside of the roof through the middle hole. And you'd have a piece of thread that's just going right through the middle.
There we go.
Cool. And you can leave a pretty long tail sticking out the back.
Huh.
And you notice I didn't double up the thread. You don't really have to. You can just kind of hold on to it. You don't need to tie knots either. And, just hold on to it where the thread's coming through. The wax thread doesn't come out of the needle very easy either. So then we go up to one of the other 2 holes. It doesn't really matter which one. And we're going from the inside of the book back out to the back. So you should end up with a piece of thread coming out of the middle, and on the same side, a piece of thread with the needle coming out of one end. And if you look on the inside, well, it's okay. You can have a knot if you want, but, and then you have a piece of thread kind of going from the middle to the top, and then that side is empty, right?
Oh.
Yeah. Then if you put a knot in the thread, it'll sometimes pull through the hole kind of tight and tear the hole and make it bigger. But so then we're gonna go. I mean, you can kind of guess, right, which place we're gonna go next.
The empty one?
Yeah, go down to the one that doesn't have thread coming out of it yet.
Oh.
And so again, from the outside, we're sewing in. So you've got your tail, piece of thread going across the whole entire, what we call the spine. And then on the inside, you've got your thread with a needle. And on this side, there's thread connecting the middle hole to the top. So where do you think we're gonna go next?
The middle hole?
The middle hole again, yeah. We're kind of connecting the dots, right? With the middle hole. And this is where we might want a close-up. So once we get through, you can take your needle off, and you see you have your 2 pieces of thread, and then you have this one that's going along the spine. You need to make sure that one of your threads is on one side, and the other is on the other. You don't want them to both be on the same side, right? You need to make sure that this one goes underneath, so that when you pull tight with both sides, it's like if this were bunny ears, you need the middle thread to go between the ears. And then you can just do a couple real basic square knots.
So like this?
Yes, perfect.
All right.
And then a couple square knots. And you have these ends. And if you want to trim them, if you have too much, you can, but don't cut right at the knot. You need to leave a little bit of thread left. And there it is. That's the beginning of our first sewn book. It's called the pamphlet stitch. So if you'll notice this, the book's got, these pages are all connected at the top.
Yep.
You could cut those with scissors if you wanted to. Bookbinders use often for when they're folding. Oh, I got 2, that's good. Just throwing things on the floor. For folding, they've got these things they call bone tools or bone folders. And
Are they actually made of bone?
yeah, usually they're made of cow bone, yeah.
Wow. So now you know.
And then,
and you see I pull straight, I'm not turning it, I'm pulling straight up. And so you can do that with a letter opener or a butter knife even, works really well. Or if you don't feel up to that, you can use scissors to cut it, right? And sometimes you get a rough tear, especially if it's the first time you've done it. But that's kind of cool. They call that a deckled edge in
on like artist papers and stuff, when it's got like a torn as opposed to a cut edge. That's fancy. Okay. So for the next part, to make a cover, I cut these pieces of bookboard down to be the right size. They should be about the same as the front. So each of us need 2 of them. And this particular cover is a really simple one. We might do a more complicated one a little bit later, but what you're gonna need is you have your cover boards, so 2 of those, then you need 2 pieces of what you want your cover to look like. And you can use any sort of decorative paper. If it's a little heavier, it's nicer. We cut up these maps of the Chuck TC that we're going to use for our patterns. So we got our 2 maps pieces, and they need to be, for this particular book, it should be about 8.5 by 11, because that's the size of our the original page we started with. So you end up with 2 cover sheets of paper, 2 boards, and as you can see, if we were to fold, let's say, let's choose one of them. If we were to fold one of our sheets of paper in half, hot dog, one of our pieces of paper in half, hamburger, the one that's hamburger is about the same height as our board, but longer on both sides. And the one that is hot dog is the same width, but taller. And so we want to take whichever paper we want to be the inside cover and fold it hot dog, and then we can cut it in half on that fold line. And then whichever one we want the outside to be, we fold it hamburger and cut it. And with the, again, if you have something like a butter knife or a letter opener or this bone tool, you can even just tear it. But you can also just take your time with scissors. So if you want to, you can stack them so you see that you have enough parts, right? You have a hot dog and a hamburger for each, and a book board for each. Now for here, I'm going to tell a little story. I'm going to move some stuff out of the way so we can see my story about an elephant. And this is a story that I've used to help me remember how to fold this right. I think you call it a mnemonic device, right? And you use something like stories or pictures to help you, or words to help you remember something. So with my mnemonic device, we use an elephant. And so the first step is we're going to take our piece of paper, our board, and as tightly as we can fold the 2 sides in of the, what I guess we were calling our hamburger piece, and do the same thing, put in the middle, and fold the 2 sides over the top and bottom. Okay. So now, if I were to make an elephant with this, my elephant would have, maybe this would be where the face is, and these 2 flaps would be my elephant's ears. I could even draw like eyes on it if I wanted to. And my elephant needs what? Like, what does an elephant have? It's got big ears and a trunk, yeah. And so I'll set this piece of paper in so that that first little fold lines up with the bottom of the piece that has the ears. And so that makes the trunk, right? You got our elephant trunk. So you got your ears and your trunk. And then I set the piece of paper on top to be the elephant's face, right? That kind of holds the trunk in place. Ears, trunk. Again, we can put his eyes on. And like, what are elephants scared of? They're scared of mice, right? I've been told. So if this elephant were to see a mouse, the first thing it would do is it would cover its eyes with its ears so that it doesn't have to look at it, because it's kind of like when you stick your head in a hole in the ground, right? Like you can't, yeah, if you can't see it, it can't do anything to you, it can't hurt you. And then it would use its trunk to protect its face, right? So that's as far as the elephant story goes. Then what you need to do is you want to flip it over, and as carefully as you can, you want to try to slip the rest of the trunk between the board and that back piece of paper that was the back of the head, you know, that the ears are attached to. And you kind of slip it in there and you end up with a piece of paper. Thing. And the harder it is to do that, the tighter that your fold will be, the better it'll fold together.
You put on the trunk so that these two lines match up. You put on the face. He's first scared, so he covers his eyes with his ears so he can't see the mouse. And he protects his face with his trunk. And then you flip it over. And this is where having a close-up is useful. See, we're going to try to put the trunk, the end of the trunk, oops, in here between the board and the paper. And so it should fold over, and you should be able to kind of slip an end in, and then sort of force it in there, and it goes in. And if your fold is nice and tight, then that can hold together pretty well. Sounds a little looser, but that's okay. And those are our two covers.
Now to attach these covers to our book is actually pretty simple. The one side that, see how there's openings on the tall sides? You can slip the front page of your book into one of those.
Oh, no.
Yeah. You kind of have to wiggle it in there because it's going to bump into the other side of the piece of paper. So you slip the front page in one side, and then you slip the back page in the other one. And, sometimes your folds will start to come apart, and you just have to repair them, right? You just let them fall apart a little bit, and then push them back together. And that'll give you the back side. And this will hold together without any glue, but you can also put glue in there to make things hold a little tighter, Yeah, so what it's bumping into is this piece of the paper that's folded on the other side. So like this, see how there's that folded? So you just have to get it either over or under that. And like a pencil or a knife or a bone tool can sometimes help. Those are the covers. And so the last step is putting a spine on the book. So, and again, you don't need to use any glue, but it's kind of loose. So I'll show you how you can do a little bit of gluing to hold it together if you want it to be a little bit more sturdy. But to make the spine, you're going to have to take a piece of paper and see how this is about the same height. That was from another one of these 8.5 by 11s, just torn in half. And you really only need half of one of these. So watch if I tear. So this is a piece of paper that's basically the same size as your cover. I'll let you have that one. And we take these and fold them in half, right? We want to fold it so that it's still the same height as the book, but now it's half as wide. And then if you take the side that has the spine, that has your stitching, you can actually tuck your paper in on one side and do the same thing. See, you tuck it in one side and then you wrap it over and tuck it in the other side as well. And that covers your sewing and tightens up the cover just a little bit. Yeah. So again, we're going to use a little bit of glue to make this cover stay on a little bit better. And so I just squirted out a little bit of this Mod Podge, which works as glue. It's a good sealer, water-based glue. And I just put some on a scrap piece of paper. And inside the bookbinding packet, there should be some of these little scrap pieces of the same board that the cover was made out of. And I use these to apply glue. I just kind of get a little bit of glue on the end of it. And then on any of these little edges where I maybe want it to be a little bit tighter, I can stick the glue in there, right? So and I tend to put it so that it's like kind of glue side up and attached, and then try to get glue on the top piece of paper so that when I push it down, it sticks. Because if I went glue side down, I'd probably get glue right all over that little edge. Right, but it doesn't matter that much. You're just trying to use something. People will use a small paintbrush with glue. You're just trying to get the glue underneath the different edges of your book.
Glue only really on one side, and I'm sticking it underneath there and getting it, wiping it underneath on that under edge. I can just pick that up and gently putting it down. So, and then the other edge can be important, right? You can go in to how the cover is attached on this back edge, and that's what's going to hold the spine in place. See, so again, underneath that back edge. It doesn't take very much glue. Glue's pretty strong, back edge, and make that stick down to the spine. And you can do the same thing on this front edge here too. You can glue those down if you want. You can go around to all the different sides, and you're just getting a little bit of glue in there so that the edges stick down, and it should then hold on there pretty well. So the glue's not even drying, that's pretty sturdy. And that's a way to make the cover a little bit more permanent.
This is just glue those edges. Otherwise it does kind of fall off. These are nice little journal things, right? I think if you did, this is with 6 sheets of paper. If you did this with 10, you know, that would actually be a decent size journal, right? Like you end up losing 4 pages. So it'd be like 76 page book to give to a friend for like a sketchbook or a journal. So
Christmas present.
Yeah, that's the simplest hardcover I know how to do.